Oh, yeah, I remember this movie. Or do I? Patreon commission review. This one for Dark City. This is a movie I've not only seen, I have owned it on DVD for a long time. This is one of the first movies I bought on DVD because I've always liked it. And I've also always had problems with it. I haven't watched it in a while, but I basically learned that, yeah, the things that I had issues with, I still largely have issues with. The things that I always thought were good, though, are still really, really good. This is a difficult movie to describe if you don't know anything about it. So I'm going to give you the broadest description. I'm then going to make a recommendation, and then I'm going to talk about the full thing without concern for spoilers. Okay? Here's the broad thing. This is a very atmospheric, darkly atmospheric, sort of noir tinged, mysterious setting where you have a man who wakes up, does not remember who he is, and it's not just that he doesn't remember who he is, but the world is weird. Stuff doesn't totally make sense, and he seems to be the only one who recognizes that. I don't want to say right now where stuff goes with that, but if that alone kind of intrigues you, and keep in mind this was written and directed by Alex Proyas, this was the movie he did after The Crow. So if you like The Crow, maybe consider watching this if you haven't already. If you do decide to watch it and you haven't seen it before, honestly, if you decide to rewatch it and you haven't seen it in a while, maybe take this recommendation on board as well. Mute it for the first 90 seconds. You don't need to skip the first 90 seconds, but you should mute it because that means you won't be subjected to the explanatory voiceover that the studio made him add. Because, yeah, it plays so much better without it. Because with that explanatory opening thing, I'm not going to say it ruins the first hour, but it does significantly reduce the sense of what is going on that the first hour was trying to bring across. So that's my main recommendation on this. If you're going to watch it, mute it for the first 90 seconds and then enjoy. So that's it for non-spoiler stuff. I'm just going to talk about the whole thing. There will be spoilers. Just be aware. Fantastic cast in this. Like across the board. This is the first thing I ever saw Rufus Sewell in. And he's really good for a part like this because he can carry a certain amount of main character charisma, but there's also just something a little bit unusual about his face. Not like unsettling or anything, but it's just not quite a leading actor's face. But it's also not fully a character actor's face. He's kind of in this middle ground that actually makes him perfect for a role like John Murdoch, the man who wakes up in this setting and does not know what's going on. He's real good for that. John Hurt is in it as a detective who is tracking down, ultimately trying to track down John. You have Jennifer Connelly as the love interest. You have some really, just absolutely actors who just command the screen so well playing the key members of The Strangers. You have Bruce Spence, who is always good. Ian Richardson as Mr. Book is great. And you have Richard O'Brien, Riff Raff himself from the Rocky Horror Picture Show, playing Mr. Hand. Oh, he's so good. He's absolutely perfect for this kind of role. Because the Strangers, I actually really like the way that they do them because I can find like groupthink kind of things very dull, especially when they all look so similar. But despite the fact that they are all incredibly pale and bald and dressed in the same sort of black leather fetish looking outfits, there still feels like there's a distinction. Different ones of them express themselves a little bit differently, a little bit different intonations, and pretty distinct looks, even all having shaved heads. So like perfect casting as far as all that goes. And the general atmosphere and feel of mystery as you watch the city changing, get twisted, and people's lives get rearranged. Kiefer Sutherland, at the time, very much playing kind of against type, to the point that when he first got the script, he asked his agent, are they sure they sent this to the wrong Sutherland? Because this seems like they might have meant this to go to my dad. But, playing this very, awkward, stammering, cowardly character, he's quite good in this as well. It's a great cast that really do wonderful things with their parts in this gloriously bizarre setting. Honestly, this is something that I think is kind of begging for a remake as a miniseries. Like 6 episodes, about 5 hours altogether. I think this would absolutely kill. And I think it would also benefit from that to a certain extent, because as much as I love the sense of mystery and the way it progresses and the sort of parallel lines of Mr. Hand, like having what were supposed to be John Murdoch's memories implanted to him so that he can know what things John Murdoch, who does not have his memories, is like pulling the threads on and be like, okay, well, I actually remember all the things he doesn't, but he's trying to learn about the things he doesn't remember, so I can kind of figure out where he's going, what he's doing, and that's the way they try and track him down. Like, that's a really cool idea. The whole notion of the city, and just how well they build the sense of being trapped, and just starting with such small things. Oh, Shell Beach, you been there? Oh yeah, of course I've been there. Cool. How do you get there? And people just not remembering the directions. And then the questions that over time evolve, like, okay, when was the last time you remember seeing the sun? And not like a childhood memory, like this morning, yesterday, last week. And it builds really, really, really well. The story would benefit from a little bit of breathing room for some of its aspects. There is an element and there is a theme here in the notion of, are we only our memories, or is there more to us than just the things that we believe we have experienced? And that's present, and it's not really explored at all. And I don't think that in a movie format that it necessarily would have benefited from more time spent on that, but it is definitely kind of an underdeveloped aspect, and something that I would love to see expanded again in like a mini series. Funnily enough, as it was going on, I found myself thinking, of all things, about the Amazing Digital Circus, which is totally a completely different beast altogether. But I remember just thinking about, the ways in which that setting is really weird and just allows weird stuff to happen with no explanation of what it is, but there clearly is an intent. Like, the creators know what that is, but the audience doesn't. That is very much kind of the same tone for this. And I feel like if this got released now, especially as a miniseries, or heck, go all in, do it animated like Knights of Guinevere or something, I think this would absolutely kill it with a lot of the audiences for like indie animation or something like that these days. Because it builds its mystery really well, and the answers are well developed, and they're not like the most mind-blowing answers. They land a lot better if you skip the first 90 seconds or muted it rather, but they aren't the most completely, oh, nobody has ever thought of that. I mean, a little bit more so at the time, but even at the time I remember thinking like, okay, I guess I could have guessed at that. But like the way that they build it, the way they peel back the onion of the weirdness is just really well constructed in this. There's 2 aspects that I think are actually kind of problems. So like the not fully exploring the notion of, are we just our memories or are we more than that? That is there, but it is kind of underdeveloped. So that could benefit from more time, but for the purpose of this movie, like, it's fine. It's one of those things that like adds a little bit more depth than there might have otherwise been, but it's kind of not the point. There are a couple of things that I don't think fully work, and one of them admittedly is a little bit taste, which is, I don't think the romantic angle especially works. It doesn't completely fall apart because, like, the need for a human connection, I can believe driving, John and the woman who remembers being his wife together. But at the same time, it kind of overbanks on that. It's not that there's nothing there. It just, like a lot of romantic subplots, it tries to cash it in for more than it's worth, or at least that I think that it was worth. That's another thing that could be developed if it was a bit longer. But that admittedly is slightly personal taste, because we all know how I feel about 95% of romantic subplots. So yeah, okay, fair enough. The other thing is the conclusion is not... When I say the conclusion, I don't mean the very end. I actually think the very end is quite good. But like the final confrontation between Murdoch and the strangers, and especially his showdown with Mr. Book. Yeah. Let me put it this way, and this is a comparison that I actually think is very apt. But imagine if the final confrontation between Neo and Smith in The Matrix wasn't a knockdown, drag-out kung fu fight, but was instead the two of them standing some distance from each other, thinking at each other really hard. That's kind of what the final confrontation on this is. And like, they try to make that feel bigger. And there might have been ways to do it. Like, honestly, animes kind of do a decent job of selling that kind of thing on a semi-regular basis, but they don't quite pull it off here. And it just, it comes across as goofy in a story that otherwise has taken itself very seriously in a way that has worked, despite it being absurd at times. So yeah, the final confrontation, they try and make it like big and climactic, but it is, for as many things as they have blowing up in the background, it is ultimately two guys staring at each other really hard for about 5 minutes. I just don't really think that works. Oh, I suppose the other thing, and like this is something that I didn't remember about it, and I'm not. Here's what I'm gonna say. I'm not gonna give it I'm not personally gonna hold this against the movie for a reason I'll explain in a second. But I also won't defend this, which is that it does use sex workers and streetwalkers as serial killer fodder, and they're given a little bit of humanity when they are acknowledged at all, which is not very much. And I will say that while that is, frustrating to rewatch now that I'm more aware of that, like as a trope, but I will say that given how heavily it is leaning into noir storytelling, I don't want to say I fully give it a pass, but I am more willing to let it go because that is something that is kind of ingrained in the genres or at least one of the genres that this thing is dealing with. And it's the genre that most heavily influences the atmosphere. So like, I don't love it. You could definitely change it. The movie would suffer almost nothing, like from having the victims of this killer not all be sex workers. That would not hurt the story in any way, shape, or form. So again, I'm not really going to defend it, but I also don't want to let it ruin my my enjoyment of it, partially because, again, like, really common for the genre. Doesn't make it okay, but it does make it a little bit easier for me to be like, yeah, this, okay, moving on. But yeah, the parts that are good on this are so good, though. Like, the atmosphere is astounding. The acting's really good. The music's a little much at times, but it's mostly pretty well deployed. And like I said, just the way the layers get peeled back over time as it goes. It's there's something really special here that I really kind of want someone to take a second crack at. Like give it a spit shine, give it a little bit more time. I think this could be something astounding. As it is, it's a little bit of a rough diamond. If you like the sort of dark sci-fi or noir sort of genres and the idea of mashing them up. If you're into that, this is kind of a rough diamond. Could use a shine and a polish, but there's the good stuff that's here. It's hard to find other stuff that does it better. Like, this thing's strengths, I am struggling to think of something that did the same kind of thing any better than this did its strongest aspects. So, yeah. Dark City! You've seen it, what you think about it? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Patreon pays the bills, enables me to do this as my living, even if you can't help me out that way. Like, share, subscribe. They also help. Don't worry too much about it, though. We take a relaxed attitude around here, so you just come on back next time you need a break. And now to thank my highest supporting patrons: Robin Moore, Jared Boyce, Zubin Lafula, Auntie Kate 808, Mira G, Angry Casperol, Dave Hall, Oliver B, Mystic Shadow, Sean Miller, Welsh Wrestling Geeks, Melissa Pedersen, Becky Sparks, Twylord, Tracy Scrabbit, Pal Barabajagal, Magdalena, Sir Didymus is my favorite. And to thank some supporters from the lower tiers, thank you to Wordmaker, Lucy Llewellyn, and Beginner's Mind Podcast. And if you want to hear me say your name as well, you can check out the rewards on the Patreon, and there's other stuff besides, and it'll help keep these absurd creatures fed.